My name is Navdeep Maini.
My name is Andre Dengi.
My name is Nicholas Iliadis. We are doing a junior division group performance entitled
Boston Busing. The debate goes on. Hey Sam, did you see this? Judge Garrity died today on April 19th, 1999, in his home in Wellesley, Massachusetts.
What?
Wow, that's an name from the past.
Excuse me, can I see that? Wow. He really had a big impact on my life.
How so?
Well, I was a freshman at South Boston High School. Actually, I was supposed to be. But Judge Garrity changed all that. I was bused to Roxbury.
I guess we have something in common. My son was 9 in 1974. He was a student at Eisenhower Elementary School in Roxbury, all until Judge Garrity's ruling, which bused them all across the city to some school in Charlestown.
You don't say.
I happened to be teaching at Charlestown High in 1974. That was quite an experience, and I too can thank Judge Garrity for that. I lost students and gained students at the same time.
Busing, the solution to everything.
Solution? Are you kidding me? Solution for what?
I remember it all being about desegregating schools in Boston, but was there a solution? There are many reasons why forced busing is not an adequate way to solve the segregation problem caused in the early 20th century. For example, many minorities were against forced busing.
That's very surprising, considering the fact that minorities are the very people forced busing was meant to help. Why would minorities despise a plan designed to benefit them?
Well, that's debatable.
It was debated all the way back to 1954 in the Brown versus the Board of Education case. Mr. Brown just wanted his daughter to go to the school 2 minutes away from his house. But Topeka, Kansas said that Oliver Brown's daughter was black, and she had to go to the black school, which was a few miles away.
That isn't exactly what was happening in Boston, but Brown versus Board of Education, it paved the way for debates over desegregation in Boston.
In the Brown case, Chief Justice Warren said with all deliberate speed. What did he mean by that?
I think he meant that schools needed to be integrated, but he didn't set a time requirement. All Warren said was, with all deliberate speed.
Maybe if Warren had said, within 10 years, all schools in the United States must be segregated, then the Racial Imbalance Act might have been written earlier, or it might have been more strictly enforced. Who knows?
That's certainly debatable.
But more people agreed that desegregation is inevitable.
It was because of Brown versus the Board of Education, Massachusetts came up with the Racial Imbalance Act in 1965. The RIBA clearly states that a school is racially imbalanced if 50% of its students were non-whites.
Which, well, for the white schools, was those being touched.
What are you talking about? White schools were affected. He was bust.
What caused white schools to be affected?
Well, it was in 1970 that a group of black parents sued the Boston Public School Committee for violating the 14th Amendment, which states that all people born in the United States have equal rights and citizenship. It also mentioned that the Boston Public School Committee was deliberately segregating black students.
It was called Morgan versus Hennigan, and it wasn't until 1974 the final verdict was given. The sad part is that this occurred here in Boston. I mean, Boston is seen as a role model for the whole U.S. It's in Boston where the first public schools originated, and the American Revolution began in Boston too.
A lot of people were against busing. 80% according to Mayor White in 1974. When I heard my friends talking about white flight in the summer of that year, I thought I was going to have to move out of Boston.
Mayor White had even tried to contact Judge Garrity, but Garrity felt the phone call would be inappropriate. Then White said, the arrogant ass. He issues this damn order that retires to his suburban estate in the affluent community of Wellesley, Massachusetts.
He would control everything in my school. The teachers, the cops. He even controlled what kind of textbooks we used. One day, one of my teachers stated that she can't come in early or on the weekends to prepare for class. She can't even leave school because there are protesters standing outside. She felt like every day when she got up to go to prison. She also mentioned that racism is like a huge cloud that hangs over Boston. Someday, this cloud must break and let the sun shine again.
I don't understand on wasting money on busing students around town instead of just making all the schools equal in education.
Exactly. And Louise Day Hicks, chairman of the Boston Public School Committee at the time, worked hard to keep everything the way it was. It took Boston another 9 years, after being threatened to lose $52 million of state education funds, to finally drop a plan for school desegregation.
Sometimes, some kids were even labeled as black when they weren't. One day, I had a student arrive in my classroom that was bused for other blacks. I noticed that he was Hispanic and asked him why he was bused here. He told me that the Boston Public School Committee labeled him as black, but his sister was labeled as white, and so she was sent to Roxbury High School.
Other parents had told me that busing would offer better opportunities for the children. Since the schools in their neighborhood were terrible, parents beside those parents thought that busing would just destroy the social life of their children. Neither view is wrong. Parents just want the best for their children. They just didn't know what was the best solution at the time.
I was a black teacher, but now I'm retired. One day, when I was working at Charlestown High, the vice principal had to do something very scary. He had to knock on the door and notify the police that the whites were isolated in the main stairwell, freeing the fire staircases on either side. As the blacks were being left to safety, the whites got wind of what was happening. In an instant, a dozen white boys rushed around the corner and started hitting rocks at the buses. I couldn't believe it. After the vice principal saw that, he said, "Such scenes are usually associated with desegregation of the Deep South." However, this one occurred here at Charlestown High.
Wow, that's horrible. But at least this type of conflicts don't occur anymore.
For safety purposes, after that incident, all teachers, including me, had to park our cars in the Charlestown Navy Yard. One day, when I was leaving school, I heard some protesters chanting, "Die, Negro, die!" and also, "Bust them back to Africa." I couldn't believe it.
I don't know about your son, but the buses I was bused on were not in good condition. One day, the bus broke down just as it was pulling into the schoolyard.
One time, it must have been 1987 or 1988 in the fall when I was driving through the Sumner Tunnel, and I noticed something very, very tragic. A bus, just a regular yellow old school bus, had broken down, and students were lined up on the side of the tunnel. Traffic officials were more concerned over traffic than the students. To this day, I just couldn't believe my eyes.
Is forced busing considered education? Anyways,
Forcing students of different ethnic backgrounds to sit next to each other is by no means integration. It's actually opening up a bigger window for racism, the exact opposite goal needed to be reached by Boston busing.
I remember when all the white students from Charlestown High went outside to protest against busing. They weren't too happy when the police locked the doors and wouldn't let them back in.
While talking to other parents, I had learned of the good side of busing. I mean, as a black parent, you might think that I supported busing, but I personally did not. This one black parent I was talking to told me she wanted the best for her child, but the schools in her neighborhood were just terrible. The better school was far away, so her son had to be bused.
Now, not every parent felt that way. My parents didn't want me to be bused because they thought I was going to have a hard time making new friends.
There's nothing wrong with neighborhood schools as long as everyone is treated the same.
I agree.
Busing did not only affect the students, but the teachers as well. You know, teaching is about helping the younger generations. The other teachers wouldn't try to get along with me either just because I was black. It was our directive as teachers. If the whites got up to leave the building, they were allowed, but they could not re-enter. We had our sign closed to keep watch.
I mean, think about it. They expected children to wake up at 6 a.m. to be bused to a hostile environment where they're not even going to get a better education? Seriously?
I was living, if that's what you want to call it, a nightmare. Helicopters overhead, police all around the schoolyard, for which I was thankful for. But all a constant reminder. People so full of hate. It just made going to school so hard. Did you know that this began as an effort to remedy the grave wrongs of state-sanctioned racial segregation? Look what it's done now. It's turned American society, black and white, on its head.
Also, white flight and a burgeoning immigrant population have dramatically changed the racial makeup in many parts of Boston.
It's so shocking that in 1970, 80% of the population was white. Now today, in 1999, only 54% is white.
Are the schools really better off today?
Well, that's debatable. Ooh, it's getting late. I gotta go. It was nice talking to you.
I like hearing your side of the story.
Thanks.
See you later.
You too.
Between 1999 and today, in 2011, changes have continued within the Boston public school system.
Blacks, Hispanics, and Asians now make up about 85% of the city's 64,000 public school students, up from about 40% since busing began.
As a result, most areas of the city, including once lily-white South Boston, are both racially and ethnically diverse.
Schools are now segregated once again.
The
And
debate goes on.
Okay, yep, take your props out and you can ask the audience to leave.